I'm Dr. Richard S. Martinez. I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Excellence. Please take a moment to listen to Alan Oda and Jennifer Elrod in their reflections on the Diversity Ambassador Program.
Right. So when I went into the diversity ambassadors, I thought, okay, this is a nice thing to do. I think it was something that would be positive somehow for me to contribute to campus. It was a good learning experience for me. There were things that I learned from that diversity ambassador experience that I was not expecting. One of them being that there is a process in which people start to understand the whole concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not something that happens overnight. And to understand this also, well, maybe because I'm a developmental psychologist, that to see that it's not going to happen just in one, it's not just happen in just one particular revelation. That's going to be a series of experiencing different truths that get to a person to understanding, being, as you say, color aware, I think was invaluable. So I just wanted to make sure that was stated before we signed off.
Thank you, Alan. And now that you mentioned that, the diversity ambassadors, Mika and I, when we are with you collectively in every cohort, we learn so much, and each cohort experiences that level of awareness building. And Jennifer, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did the Diversity Master Program in 2020 in the midst of a pandemic in the fall, and I think what's beautiful is you're gathering with other departments that you would never cross paths with typically. And so I remember I was in some of the one-on-ones, because we would, you'd have breakoff meetings, and I was in some of the one-on-ones with people from the athletics department. School nursing doesn't really engage with the athletics department entirely. And so, or people in different offices I didn't even know existed at APU. But part of that is the active listening that you taught us, of what it means to actively listen and engage and ask questions, where it's not about me rehearsing a story in my head in order to speak, but what does it look like to be fully present and to listen and ask questions and to repeat back some of the things that are saying. And I think, the tagline of APU is we're difference makers. And so part of being a difference maker is going through the Diversity Ambassador Program as the first step, and then continuing to engage. And part of what changes, I think, people is, Alan said, it's a one step and one action, one thing at a time. And part of that is relationally. It's when you can put a name and a face to stories, you begin to see and understand that they exist and they're real. I think I mentioned this in our Asian Women Speak of, it's asking the question of, are these stories real? But I think it's when you begin to associate, like, well, my friend Jen said that this happened to her, so this actually is real. It's not something in the media or something that's floating around social media, but I know her story and I know that she's experienced that, and so it is real. So how can I speak to that? It's, I've continued to say we're living real life, what would you do episodes, but John Kionis doesn't appear. He's not here to say, like, what would you do or why did you react that way? But, how do we speak and create voice to these situations that truly, truly matter? And Diversity Ambassador Program is the first step, I think, to learning. If you haven't done it yet, or maybe, I don't know, sign up again if it's been a couple years. I know that the content gets refreshed, and so it's important. And begin relationships with those in your departments who don't look, think, act, vote, or speak like you, and engage in those relationships that truly matter, and begin to understand and see our brothers and sisters in Christ. It's how do you love your neighbor? And we love our neighbor by building those relationships.
It was in the Diversity Ambassadors I got a chance to hear Everett Brooks share about how our non-traditional students who are veterans, that they experience PTSD by going to chapel because of the dark lighting and there's so many people there and things like that. I had no idea of that, and supposedly PTSD is one of the topics that I study. But to know that we have those kinds of voice that need to be heard on the campus. I think that again, I got that from diversity ambassadors. I think that that's a part of the campus that I was aware of, but it didn't realize how important it is for us that we have our quote unquote non-traditional students, those who served our country in the military, those who are veterans, that they're important voices on our campus. And the diversity ambassadors introduced me to the importance of making sure we recognize those voices and make sure that they're heard.